Ecuador is preparing for the second round of its 2017 presidential elections, and opposition groups and their media allies are trying desperately to assassinate the character of the governing País Alliance and its candidate, Lenin Moreno. The country's private media give the lion's share of space to opposition voices who describe País as corrupt and undemocratic. Meanwhile, Western media, like the New York Times, follow suit in calling leftist Latin American governments dictatorships. A recent article from the New York Times characterized Correa as personally controlling the legislative branch, saying that Ecuador's National Assembly for years rubber-stamped his reforms with few questions asked. The Miami Herald says that Moreno's vice presidential running mate, the country's current vice president, is campaigning under a cloud of corruption. However, the publication fails to mention that these claims come without any proof, and are ironically made by those who have fled the country to the United States, themselves charged with corruption. It's clear that in much of the private media, there is little regard for what is most important: the truth. However, the Center for Economic and Policy Research notes numerous statistics that are largely ignored by these same outlets, like Ecuador's annual per capita GDP growth during the past decade, like the important social gains and poverty reduction schemes, which, by the way, the CEPR says have allowed for significant economic and social progress despite two major external economic shocks that triggered recessions in Ecuador. Never mind the important local efforts to stamp out the once rife corruption in the country, including the recently passed referendum, which prohibits public servants, elected or not, from having assets in tax havens. So what's behind this distorted media focus? Well, Uruguayan journalist Aram Aronian describes it well. He wrote that this is part of a fourth-generation war with soldiers who are not military experts, but communications experts, who replace military operations with psychological operations, and where bullets give way to media slogans bombed 24 hours to dominate minds and, in turn, society. Renowned civil rights activist Malcolm X once said, "If you're not careful, the media will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing."